Try to find either truly again. Back to Silver Sands. One leg.
Yeah, wherever it is. Okay, so I was just gonna let you know that it's about.
It's hard to imagine a worse way than start and end point. I mean, back though, you know. No, that wasn't that actually.
So mine's not.
It wasn't gonna be a concern.
Yeah, because I just paid it off.
Didn't lose a paddle, that was terrible. And didn't need
I know.
to get rescued because the waves were like 3-4 feet and it was like cross chop and all that.
Rescuing is better than.
Didn't need to get rescued is good.
Yeah, especially since I didn't have communication device on me, so it'd be a little bit.
Oh, that's
I was
nice.
wearing like high vis gear, but it's cool. I had my PFD, I got my leash, like all this stuff.
But you'll change that up next time.
Yeah.
Little different setup.
On shore, I'll roll it out to 50 miles an hour. I'm doing that
Oh,
one
really
again.
different, yeah.
Yeah.
Your sweater and your folder. Beautiful. Very complimentary.
Yeah. Did you make it up to the target?
It is 7 between Grand Street and all right, it is 7:01, so I'll call the meeting to order. If we could please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have a roll call, Ms. Griffin?
Megan Doyle.
Here.
Scott Furmender.
Mr. Fernandez excused for travel.
Tracy Irby. Here. Tom Kova.
Mr. Kova's excused for work.
Lauren Maller.
Here.
Una Petrowski.
Here.
Christina Preet.
Here.
Michael Smith.
Here.
Cindy Wolf Boynton.
Here.
And Susan Glennon.
Here.
8 members present.
Thank you. All right, we have student reports this evening. Now, Jonathan Law went first last month, so I think Foreign would start first this month. And we have Luke Hackett and Davi Lee. You flying solo today?
Good evening, everyone. Before we begin, I'd just like to say thank you again for this opportunity to speak with you today. Again, my name is Davi Lee. Unfortunately, my co-speaker is unable to join us this evening as the foreign boys soccer team takes on Sheehan tonight. Good luck, Lions. So I will be presenting solo tonight. This month, Foreign had 2 inspiring assemblies. Anthony Valentine spoke about resilience and finding your identity and spoke one-on-one with students about these issues. The No Hate Tour brought in BMX riders to perform tricks while they spoke about bullying, overcoming obstacles, and following their passions. A huge thank you to Anthony Valentine and the No Hate Tour for speaking with foreign students. Foreign had a very successful club fair in the beginning of October where students had represented various clubs and introduced them to their peers. We would also like to extend a very warm welcome to our new school resource officer, Officer Kreitman. We are excited to see the great work she will do at Foreign. We would like to send our best wishes to Officer Kish as she has been promoted to the Special Investigations Unit as a detective. Good luck, Officer Kish. Foreign's newspaper, the Mainstream Mirror, will be switching over from a printed newspaper to a printed full-color magazine this year. The October issue of our magazine was successfully printed and distributed at the beginning of the month. Last week, students were chosen from Foreign and traveled to East Shore Middle School to promote Foreign at the high school fair. Students handed out Foreign apparel and answered any questions that the middle schoolers had. Next week, the same students will represent Foreign at Harborside. Last week, Foreign raised over $800 for the Get in Touch Foundation between our Wear Pink Day fundraiser and our pink-themed football game. Thank you to all the students, faculty, and family that donated. We would like to congratulate our fall scholar athletes, soccer player William Riedel and our cross-country athlete Alexandra Regan. Congratulations to both students on both their academic and athletic achievements. Continuing on the same note, we are extending our congratulations to cross-country athlete Adriana Gonzalez. Recently, she broke the school record 5K time with 20 minutes and 28 seconds. Congratulations, Adriana. Next in the athletics department, the Foreign girls swim and dive team advances to 7 wins and 0 losses, continuing their winning streak. They also raised over $3,500 for the Lionheart Fund for Breast Cancer Research. They plan to do a labathon on October 19th to raise more funds. Great job to our Lady Lions. Congratulations to our volleyball team for their amazing record this season of 13 wins and 2 losses. They have been playing well and training hard as they get closer to SECs and states. Finally, the boys cross-country team has had many successes at their most recent Wilbur Cross duels. Ford came third overall with John Fink and Max Sufer-Young placing 11th and 12th, and 5 runners running their best times of the season. Great job, Lions. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak with you, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Debbie. And then we have Jonathan Law, Addie Barber, and Lily Baird.
Thank you and good evening, board members. It is a pleasure to be with you once again. Before we begin, please allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Lily Baird. My partner Addison Barber will not be with us tonight. I will begin tonight with some law-amazing news. On the niche rankings for best high schools, Law is ranked number 38. Law is also named on the honor roll for College Board, which recognizes schools who have a positive influence with students, AP testing, college readiness, and support. We also had a successful freshman experience during this year's PSAT Day. Students are very excited for our homecoming dance, set for November 22nd. Ms. Jones was also named the Connecticut Choral Director of the Year for 2024. In academics, our journalism classes have hit the ground running to start the school year. The Advocate Online, run by Mr. Kalenich and his journalism students, had over 7,400 views in September, more than double what they had last September. Their peak months are usually in the 4 to 5K range, so this is exciting growth for them. Our National English Honor Society chapter, the Lawman Literary Society, received over 80 applications from members, and the group will hold its first meeting this month. The group is excited to get started on our club initiatives and goals. Our World Language Department is planning to induct students into the National Latin, French, and Spanish Honor Societies for the first time in school history. They are planning on having an official ceremony for all 3 languages on one night in early December to honor their students. And the Science Department has a new physics teacher, Miss Sarah Spicer, who has quickly become a valuable asset to the department, and she has been working hard to challenge her students' science thinking and make their learning relevant. Ms. Turcott and Mr. Stanton have started meetings for our award-winning science club, and students are learning about the science and engineering challenges they will compete in against students from other districts at the annual Yukon Science Olympiad. Mr. Morzini's Fishing Club is planning on walking to the beach on their specific meeting dates this year to work on their fishing skills. And Mrs. Bouchard's Environmental Club has been weeding the National Perennial Pollinator Garden and working to prepare for the winter season. The asters are still in bloom, but the remainder of the plants have left seed pods which will help feed native birds and other animals during the winter. Ms. Doolin has begun meetings for the Science National Honor Society, and members have started selecting investigative topics for their long-term projects. It has been a busy research season with lots of classes learning about databases and proper citation. So far this year, Ms. Mundy, our library and media specialist, has been to 9 classes in science, nursing, humanities, business, and more. In law sports action, our football team secured a 15-14 win over SEC rival Amity this past Thursday. Great job, Law. And our senior students, Luca Vendetti and Alex Fino, were 2 of the fall Scholar athletes. In our physical education classes, fitness testing is underway for the freshmen, and so far results have been very positive. In all senior health classes, Rape Crisis came in with presentations for seniors to discuss campus safety, personal safety, and healthy relationships. Since September 23rd, college admissions representatives have been visiting the College and Career Center. To date, 25 colleges and universities have connected with junior and senior students to share information about academics, campus life, financial aid, and the overall college admissions process. In the months of October and November, there will be an additional 35 colleges visiting law. In school counseling, students attended the University of New Haven College Fair last month and were able to connect with admissions representatives from all over the country. Over 50 families attended the freshman meet and greet with school counselors on open house night prior to open house starting, and school counselors are implementing lessons with freshmen right now to prepare students for high school success and executive functioning skills. They are very busy meeting with seniors and processing applications for early deadlines. As of right now, over 60 students are applying for November 1st deadlines. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all, and we look forward to the next meeting.
Thank you. And I'm happy to welcome, we have 2 students from the Academy with us this evening. Do you have a report? We have Raven Sanderholm and Max Wilcox. Welcome.
Good Good evening, everyone. My name is Raven. And my name is Max, and we are the student representatives from the Academy. This year is off to a great start at the Academy, and we are pleased to be offering a few new classes this year. The first is a computer science class, which has not been previously offered here. Next, we have a mixed media class, which focuses on the practical application of math skills in the real world. In the spring, we will have our first early college experience class and Intro to Business.
We also welcomed some new staff members this year. Kelsey Mueller for science, Kayla Bendetti for art, Jamie O'Brien for special ed, Nurse Barbara, John Lucio for PE and health, and Mary Alice Fortunia for the school paraprofessional. Here are a few highlights from the year so far and a few upcoming events.
We participated in a whole school shared experience for 9/11 to honor and remember those involved that day.
We have implemented a new recognition this year called the RISE Award. The RISE stands for Resilience, Integrity, Service, and Empowerment. Students who display these characteristics are recognized with tickets throughout the year, and each quarter teachers will nominate students they believe often embody these characteristics.
The Living Earth class has successfully planned and begun to purchase supplies for a garden to supplement their curriculum and bring to life the concepts taught in that class.
We participated in and completed a whole school charter stating how we want to feel, what we agree to do to ensure everyone feels that way, and what we agree to do to resolve conflict. We all signed it, and it hangs in our hallway as a reminder of our commitment to each other.
We had 15 total attendance contest winners for September, 3 of which had perfect attendance: Tomas, Grace, and Christian.
We had a successful PSAT day on October 2nd for our 10th and 11th grade students.
College campus trips have started and will continue over the next few months for interested 11th and 12th grade students.
The Academy students and staff make ongoing donations to the Purple Pantry Box and are planning several other community service projects throughout the year.
Our first Breakfast with Friends event and fundraiser is coming up in late October, and the proceeds will be donated to the Smilow Cancer Center. This event is a whole school event and includes students and staff from the PGTA program.
We are in process of planning our Veterans Day lunch where family members that are veterans are invited to be honored and celebrated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, students. I can't see you back there, so I'm going to stand up. Thank you for coming out and sharing your school information with us. We really appreciate it. And as always, you're welcome to head out at this time. We're going to have the rest of our meeting. You're welcome to stay if you want to, but we're sure you have other things to do. So thank you all for coming out. Do we have anybody in the audience who'd like to make public comment to us this evening? This is our public comment time. Okay, seeing none, I will forego the public comment statement. Move on to our chair's report, my chair's report. So just a quickly reminder to the board and to the public that tonight we begin work on our long-range planning facilities work. This will have a workshop following what I optimistically I'm hoping will be a quick business meeting. So around 7:30 we'll start with the workshop. And then for our committee of the whole meeting on the 28th, we will also have an additional long-range facilities planning workshop. So that said, we'll move on to new business. We have approval of plans, specifications, and estimates for the playground equipment at Pumpkin Delight.
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve the plans, specifications, and estimates for the playground equipment at Pumpkin Delight Elementary School, state project number 084-0213E/A.
For second? Ms. Durrell seconds. Mr. Brennan, do you have anything to present to us?
Yes, real quickly. So thank you, Ms. Glenn and members of the board. As you are aware, Pumpkin Delight is nearing in on the final phase of this project, and this final phase is the playground. So much like you guys approved the plan specifications and estimates for the construction portion of this project on February 22nd, 2022, now we are seeking approval for the plan specifications and estimates for the playground portion of this project. This is a necessary requirement for us to apply for state reimbursement, and approval of this process is something that we need for the application of the state. In your package, you will find combined plans, drawings, and specifications, which are 16 pages of the actual drawing of this playground, and you will also see the cost estimate that we have. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Brennan? Mr. Smith?
Just, so after we approve this, when would they break ground and how long would it take to install it?
So they're actively looking to break ground. So once we approve this, they've already mobilized and started securing the different playground equipment. So
Okay.
we're hoping to break ground very, very shortly and then get this up and running as fast as possible.
Any other questions? We already had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Dr. Kuchaya?
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. Thank you, members of the Board of Education. Before you this evening is the second reading of the 25-26 budget priorities and assumptions. I think we need a motion because we need action so that we can discuss.
Yes.
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve the 2025-26 budget priorities and assumptions as presented by the administration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Preet? Do we have any questions for Dr. Kuchaya? Any further questions? We discussed this last month. I don't think there were any changes requested at that time.
No, ma'am.
Any comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, board members. Moving on, the second item is the annual October 1st, 2024 enrollment report, which is found in your packet. Just giving you a little overview of how numbers compare. So as of October 1st, we have enrolled in our school system 5,174 students. Compared to the actual 23-24 total, that is 5,267 students. That demonstrates a decline of 93 students from actual to actual. We also like to look at projections and see, how close were we? We are about 48 students off of the projection in the whole district. So we projected 5,222. I'm going to give you a little breakdown by level. At the elementary level, we have 2,476 students, which is 11 more students than we actually had in our seats last year. That number is 2,465. At the middle school level, we have 1,132 students. That is a decline of 48 students compared to the number of students we had at the middle school level last year, which was the number 1,180. And at the high school level, this year, we're happy to have 1,566 students, which is 56 students fewer than last year, which was 1,622. I know a question that may be on your mind is that of kindergarten because of the legislation and the impact. We did our very best hypothetical guess on that in projections versus actual and what we thought would happen based on, God bless you, the legislation and the waiver. So I'll call your attention to the actual number of kindergarteners is 346. We projected 387. So a little off from projection. I'm going to accept that 40 kids student difference because of the change in legislation. So thank you, Mr. Giancola, for your formulaic magic there. In the other levels, at the elementary level, we were pretty darn close. We were only a few students away at each level, so for any inquiring minds, we projected 405 at first grade, we came in at 408. Second, we projected 375, we came in at 381. Third, 360, we came in at 364. In fourth grade, we projected 379. We actually have 378 students, and in fifth grade, we projected 370, and we have 377 with us. Elementary, in our opinion, particularly the primary grades, are the hardest to ensure and predict. But some of the numbers that were surprising to me as I reviewed the last year compared to this year are the number of sixth graders that we had last year. Last year we had 399 sixth graders in our schools. This year we have 349. That's a decline of 50 students. And the other number that caught my attention in comparison is ninth grade. Last year we had 397 students as freshmen, and this year we have 364, which is a decrease of 33 students. So if you have been following, obviously, our enrollment projections, this is not a surprise in that the smaller class sizes are moving through our system. They're moving through middle school, they're moving through high school. The little bump in elementary continued there yet another year. We believe that little bump will kind of flatten us out and make its way through the system over the next 10 years, of course. So predictive-wise, we do see the flattening out starting in the elementary, and we see the lower number that occurred in the elementary moving its way through middle and high. I think that's the end of my summary. I don't know if board members have any individual questions that I may have an answer to at this point. If I don't, happy for our team to work on and get back to you.
Questions for Dr. Kutaya? Mr. Smith?
Just real quick, as I'm calibrating my mind, is there historical data that I could find either on the State Department website or with you guys? Because that I would love to nerd out on that stuff.
The historical in what regard? Our actual?
Yeah, the actual enrollment numbers, yeah.
So we'll just read forward to you the SLAM report that was
Okay.
shared about a year ago.
Okay.
It gives a historical context and then where we think we're going. So we'll just read forward that on Friday.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, can move on.
Thank you. And at this time, Mr. Brennan will review the quarterly budget report and the disbursement report.
We have, oh, yes, correct, I'm sorry.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kutaya, Ms. Glennon, members of the board. According to your policy governance, you guys review a report once a quarter, and although this is a formal review once a quarter, I want to assure you that we are constantly monitoring the budget weekly, if not daily. And if there's an issue or an area of concern, we take immediate action on it and make sure we address it so that we can correct the course. In this package, I'm going to highlight a few quick pieces of information through this, and even though we do not have any concerns at this time, I just want to assure you we are monitoring each line closely. And just as a quick reminder with this report, all the way in the right column, you'll see percent used. And even though some of those percents are very high at this point, some in 99.9%, 99.2%, that does not mean that we have already expended 99% of the budget. That also takes into account money that we've set aside or encumbered for the budget, knowing that we are going to expend that money. In this first line, account 1111, this is our salaries account. And just as a reminder, this accounts for 75% of our total budget, and this is our largest line item in the budget, and this is something that we keep a close eye on, and we are right on track at this time, but I just wanted to call that to your attention. Account 1114, summer school salaries. This one and account 1118, curriculum work, although those are low percentage at this point, that is something that we will be spending as we go throughout the year and leading up into the summer work. Account 1130, retirements, our certified retirements. We are currently have 0% of that used, which is normal for this time of the year, to have a very low percentage of that being encumbered. But that is something that we keep a close eye on, and we expect somewhere between about 15 or 18 retirements on any given year. Account 4300 to 4305. These are our facilities line items. This is something that you will also notice will increase as we go throughout time as they are completing buildings and ground projects or as maintenance needs repairs to certain items. So those line items at this point are perfectly normal, and that's something that we expect to increase as we go on throughout the year. In account 4410, building rental expense, you will notice a negative $77,000 in the available balance. That's because this was an item that wasn't originally budgeted for. As the board is aware, facility space is something that we are in dire need of. And as a result of the COVID pandemic, we have a number of items that are on trailers, and that has just been a recurring expense. So this line item here is an attempt to course correct that piece where we can now empty out the items that are on the trailers, categorize, inventory what we currently have, and identify the condition of it, so that we can limit that item that you've seen on the disbursement report for some time now with the trailer lease. So that is an item that we are currently working on. Right below that, in 5100, transportation regular, you will also notice the negative in the period expended and the year-to-date expended, negative $991.16. That really refers to, it's really a matter of timing for that piece. So we receive some reimbursements for our homeless transportation. So when we are providing transportation to homeless students and we are not the nexus that needs to pay for that, we are like the pass-through at this moment, and then we are reimbursed from the city where they come from, where they were originally identified as homeless. And then if you look at the year-to-date encumbered for our transportation line item, for our regular transportation, that was as a result of Durham not processing a bill for us yet. So in this period, we did not pay Durham transportation, which is why you will see that negative line item, because the only thing that was paid to us was the reimbursement from another district. That, since then, has been corrected. In the next report, you will see that being a positive amount, because in this second quarter, we will have paid part of that bill to Durham, balancing that out. So that's just an accounting function at this time. Nothing to be concerned about. Two other areas that we're watching very, very closely is line 5600, tuition for special ed public, and 5601, tuition for special ed non-public. These ones are areas that we already have expended or plan to expend above 100%. I do want to remind the board that we will be receiving some excess cost funds to help offset that balance. But just like in any budget season, these are two areas that we are watching very closely and are a potential area of concern for, as we know that the needs of some of these special ed students are increasing, and thus for the cost of care as well. And just those lines have direct correlation. If we look back to count 5101 and 5102, which are the transportation for our special ed students. So those are two other lines. And even though at this time, those aren't exceeding the 100% mark, those are two other lines that we are watching closely as a direct correlation to the special ed tuition. And then just finally, account 6000, which is our freeze account. This is a measure that we take to help possibly offset some of this excess cost that we have in these special ed accounts. So currently we've set aside, I like to call it at this time, a set aside in this account, even though it's labeled as a freeze account. So we've taken 10% and just held it into this account in the event that we are running short with some of these special ed needs that may arise as we go throughout the year. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from board members? Mr. Smith?
Just a real quick one on the 5600 and 5601.
Yes.
Would it be possible to give examples of the differentiation between a special education public school versus non-public school?
Yes, so special ed public is like ACES and CES Trumbull, and then special ed non-public would be like a Milestone or like a Cedarhurst.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Doral?
Thank you. Same kind of question. In 5101 and 5102, 5103, is special education internal, is that throughout the district, or is that to from home? What does that cover?
That's throughout in the district, yes, that's in district.
Okay, so when the students are in class time here, or just including pickup from home to here and then?
Correct,
between?
yes, pick up from home to here, it's any in-district transportation.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Ms. Zerbe?
It's for the 4410, the COVID correction one.
Yes.
Is there a max or a limit to that number, or will that just?
Yes, so we have a lease in place for the year, so that would be the maximum amount that we've encumbered there.
The 707?
Yeah, so it's, when you take into account, I think it's going across the fiscal year here, so I think the lease, I can get you the exact number, but I believe it's approximately $93,500, if my memory serves me correctly, for the year. But yes, that is a max amount, it wouldn't exceed that. as we have that, secured that, a lease of that warehouse space.
Did you just say the year goes across
Yeah, so
fiscal
it's,
years?
we started it in like, I believe it was like May. So the amount of it is, so part of it ended up on the disbursement report, as you may have seen last May. And we go July to July, so it's a function of when the lease technically started. So there would be 77,000 as it goes
This
from
year.
May to May, and it doesn't include that additional June and July,
Okay.
because it's a one-year lease.
Okay. And this is like warehouse space, right?
It is,
Yeah.
correct.
All right. Any other questions from board members? Okay, thank you, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, and moving on to the next piece. In your package, you will also find a list of all the cash disbursements over the amount of $1,500 for the month of September. At this time, I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from board members on the disbursements? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Brennan.
Good evening, everybody. In my monthly report, you have, as usual, the listing of job postings, personnel changes for the month, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend appointments. And I would like to point out that this month we have heavy reporting on our stipends. We have middle school and high school activities and advisors, and fall coaching stipends for each of the high schools. We have one retirement so far, so we're standing at that number. It is rather early for a retirement, but this person was eager to get that in. And we are looking for 3 teacher positions still.
Questions for Ms. Capazna? Yes.
I was very surprised to see Dr. Luby resigned. And I can't remember the policy. I should have pulled it before it came. Was there an exit interview done, or will there be, or?
Oh, yes.
Okay, just want to make
Yeah.
sure. I know you can't elaborate, but,
Well, I
okay.
can actually.
Oh, okay.
Can I?
Oh, please.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
We're
it's
proud
good news.
and we're happy
Okay,
to announce
okay.
that she took a superintendent position
Okay.
in the northern part of Connecticut. So
Okay, that's bad for us, though.
It is, I
Okay.
know, I know.
Gotcha.
We were
All right.
lucky to have her.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to, thank you, Ms. Capazna.
Thank you.
That's it for your report, Dr. Gutaya. I
Yes,
believe.
ma'am.
Consent agenda, Ms. Petrowski.
Motion that the Milford Board of Education approve consent agenda items, consideration of minutes for September 9th, 2024 business meeting and September 23rd, 2024 committee of the whole meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Preet.
You got it.
You got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, board members. And that concludes our business meeting. Look at that, 7:32, very good. So now we're going to shift into a long-range facilities planning workshop. And we invite up Mary Broderick and Jack Reynolds to work with us this evening on this part of our this first workshop.
It's great to be back here. And since we saw you on September 23rd, we have visited all of your schools. We spent one day with Mr. Brennan and one day with Dr. Kataya, and we were pretty tired when we got home. But it was wonderful to see each of the schools, because it would have been difficult to guide you through this process without having that awareness. And I have to say, I think we were both really impressed. You have schools that have been educating children for decades and decades, and they are really in incredible shape, given their ages. So kudos to Pat and the team for maintaining your facilities in such good shape. Our goal for tonight is to learn from you where there are commonalities and where there are differences in your sense of what an ideal facilities plan would look, long-range facilities plan would look like for Milford. So I'm going to be covering the agenda in just a minute, but I'm going to offer Jack an opportunity to make some opening comments too.
I think my comments might be more philosophical, at least to put us all in a workshop format than we're used to having meetings. It's important to us in developing a long-range facilities plan that we're a team. There's people that know Milford, you folks know Milford, and we will be able to use your knowledge, but also to get data for you that we all agree you need to help put that plan together. I want to make it clear, as we have before, we're here to facilitate your work, to help you with your work. It's your plan. It's the Milford Board of Ed plan for long-range facilities. And that's tough. That's a lot of hard work to figure out what are these kids going to need in 10, 20, 30 years from now. What will the world be like for the children, and how will we create buildings that will help them get there? We're excited about it. We're excited about working with you and very enthusiastic about working with you and look forward to it. You know, I had to think of the idea. Martin Luther King didn't say, I've got a needs assessment, or I've got a problem list. He said, I have a dream. And I think that's what we need to start with. When we start with the problems, when we start with the needs, when we start with the weaknesses, the conversations break down. The conversations become pushback. When you start with what's the ideal, what would you like to see happen, what do you wish could happen, you find more commonality than you can believe. You find more people that agree. So that's been our hope, that we can help facilitate your thinking, help put you in exercises and processes to move a plan along, and to develop a long-range plan for the facilities in Milford.
Thanks. We also gave you an assignment. We know you have received just an incredible amount of information to be considering and processing. And really commend you and the district for gathering all that information as you begin this process. So I'm just going to move maybe this back a little bit and pull up the easel. And so what we planned, and I tried to put this up here earlier and it didn't want to stick to the paper here, so I'm not going to leave it on here, but just cover this. We'll talk about some ground rules for the conversation. We will review the ideas that you've generated, and I hope everybody had the opportunity to do that work before tonight's meeting. We already gave you some information that you would probably have included in your thinking, but we just wanted to make sure that you were on top of that. We want you to prioritize ideal. Oh, that's, thank you. I'm going to be taking it right out. Thank you, that's great. The ideal concepts. So we have a process for you to be able to do that. We want you to consider whether there's any information that you don't have yet that you think the board is going to need in order to continue this work. And then we're going to shift gears a little bit and get you thinking about the people in the community and in the schools that you want to make sure are included in this process. Whom are we talking to in interviews? Whom are we including in focus groups? And who are your targets for your surveys? And then begin to talk about what questions you would like to make sure are included in the survey. All right, so that's what we're hoping to get through tonight. And then in terms of ground rules, I want you to think about these and see if you think that these will work. That you highly value creativity, that in this part anyway, you are not constrained by realities. for this exercise tonight in particular, that you recognize that creativity resides in playfulness. That's a favorite quote of Jack's. The idea is if we can be a little bit playful with this, the idea of generating what will work for children for decades to come is enhanced. That we value ideals, that we listen to one another with respect, with one person speaking at a time, that everybody participates and you participate as equals. That you agree to disagree. It was Jerry Ford who used to say, agree to disagree without being disagreeable. And that would be what we'd hope. That if you have a disagreement, you disagree with ideas, not with people. You keep an open mind. And consider the range of options you have before you at this time. Any other things that you think would be helpful as ground rules to make sure that this is an effective process? These sound good to you? Can everybody commit to these?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, great. Let's stick these up on the wall. So let me ask then, do you want to put them up on the wall? Has everybody got has everybody written up and brought their sense of the ideal? That we can collect and pass around?
No.
No? Okay, wait.
Collected, passed around, or
Collect, you're in that place. So what we were thinking is that some of you, I don't know whether anybody has any notions that they don't necessarily want to own publicly, but they think ought to be on the table. If you're not there, we'll just capture it as you've got it. And it sounds like some of you are not in a position to hand it to me and we shuffle them. Okay, we'll just, no, type them. You're doing well with this.
You missed your email then, which said,
I
bring it
read
so
it.
that we can move.
I can give you one, but if you shuffle it, it's going to be pretty obvious it was
I
mine.
didn't know we were.
I'm really doing well with this.
No, when you matter to me. You want to read it anyway.
Did you truly want like pie in the sky, or like literally a sense of what we, would like to see?
I would hope that you approach this thinking, it's years from now, and things are really in wonderful shape. What did we do back in 2024 to set Milford up for sustaining its, or structuring its facilities so that they serve the children of Milford have served for the years that have come in advance? Does that make sense to everybody? Use this.
It's a good question, so pie in the sky or whatever, I think.
Because I did both, so I wasn't really sure.
Well, I think pie in the sky helps broaden thinking, right? And it can be playful.
And it's that playfulness that
Yeah.
usually 90% of the ideas are crazy and 10% are brilliant, and you never know which one it's gonna be.
Jack, why don't you just
Collect
draw it out,
every
and I will
reason.
capture what everybody has.
So I'm collecting them.
No, I think we're not going to collect them. Is that all right? Do you want?
You sure you're comfortable reading your own? I mean, if you put a two pie in the sky, you may want someone else to read it.
I'm good.
Everybody
I'm fine
good?
reading
Yes.
myself.
All right, everybody's good.
Either way.
Okay. Yeah, you want to?
Sure. Anyone like to go first?
Should we just start around?
Tracy, you were tempted to raise your hand. I saw it
Am I?
move.
Well, it's kind of basic, so I'll say, I didn't think that it was reasonable to say I wanted a new school for every grade level or every neighborhood. That's
Next year.
it's too much. I think too much. But I would like to. I would like to see something new for each school. So. Not something is to kind of make the something not so general.
So that in the plan, there is something new for each school
Yes,
overall. Okay.
something big.
Yeah. See, is anything else, or you want to go on to others?
Please say
We
what.
can come back to you.
So, again, I feel like I had the same question as Sue. I'm not coming into this process with an idea of what I think everything should look like, which may be surprising to some of you. I don't actually already know what I think it should look like. I'm very open to ideas and talking through it and looking forward to working through this process with everyone's ideas and the community's input and all of that. But there were some things to me that stood out as sort of, I consider them kind of rules of thumb as we make the decisions about what specific tangible facility changes should happen. And for me, it was that all the schools at each level, high school, middle school, and elementary, should have an equitable distribution of facilities. So everybody should have a gym. Everybody should have a separate cafeteria. Everybody should have technology spaces. Whatever is good enough in one needs to exist in others, so that the programming, because we always talk about how the only purpose of the facilities is to enable the programming that we think is appropriate. And so you can't do that if you have opportunities at one school that don't exist at another due to a facilities imbalance. So I think there should be equitable distribution of facilities. Looking at it from another programmatic perspective, I think that there should be dedicated space for different programs. I think there should be enough space built into the different facilities that you don't have one teacher floating around to different classes all the time and then jumping around and floating around to classes and their entire life exists on a little cart that they're pushing around the halls. I think that there should be a room and a space for all the different things. If we think it's important enough to program and to put it into the budget and the planning, then it should be important enough to exist in our facilities footprint. And my last one is that I think that buildings and campuses should be sized appropriately for a student population that enables adequate programming. If our schools are too small, we can't offer all the opportunities that we want to offer. If our schools are too big, we can offer more opportunities, but you lose some of the community. So I think there's a balance there that starts with the facilities that is adequately sized for a student population to enable the broad offering of programs that we as a board have decided are priorities for us and for our kids. So those are my three.
If you don't think I've fully captured it, please offer any corrections as we're going along.
You can throw things, violence is a better word.
I'm not the one you should tell that to. No, I think that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is mostly just, this is the first question, right? Not just telling everything. Okay. So I think when it comes to some of the hopes I have for the facilities plan, it's the understanding that in 2030, our youngest school will be 57 years old and our oldest school will be 80 years old. And doing nothing costs a lot of money and doing something costs a lot of money. And so I hope that over this process, we can have a very dynamic, robust conversation with folks in this room and folks in the community about what vision they want to, what school community they want in 5 and 10, 20, 50 years, and how do we get there? So I think that's probably the biggest thing, really understanding that there's...
So how would you answer? So what?
That is, there's a lot of other stuff that like I want to consider on answers 2 and 3, but it's going to be a long, hard conversation. We have to look at a lot of things and make some tough decisions. So,
Great.
if we don't do anything, we continue to run the risk of having a chiller go down and having to move summer programming like we had to do this summer. So in one of the high schools, and so like doing nothing has a real cost.
It can get worse than that.
Yeah. That's probably my number one. There's a lot of cost. There's gonna be a lot of money spent whichever thing we decide, and I'd rather focus on an aspirational vision than just maintaining the status quo.
Doing something, not doing nothing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be right.
I'll have other answers to other questions too.
Aspirational vision is.
So I went completely pie in the sky.
Great.
All right.
I was like, no, we won the biggest lotto in the world and we can do whatever we want. That's kind of where I went with this. And I got some very specific and some not so specific. So the dedicated space for each program, I went to the point of, yes, each teacher should have their own prep space, their own space that they call theirs. They're not grabbing papers in and out, sharing space and that kind of thing. So specific prep space for each teacher. The same goes for kids. Like I find that there's a lot of space constraints and kids being able to leave maybe their art project or their homework or whatever project they are working on in a room that is continually shared. So we're sharing spaces and kids are moving stuff back and forth as our teachers, and I find that that's probably wasteful. And in a perfect world, those are all dedicated spaces, right? So our science labs are dedicated, and there's a space for where the first graders are, and the space where the eighth graders leave their things, and never the twain shall meet, right?
So even though they're working in shared spaces, there is work, they can leave their work there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and there is, I don't know, lock cabinet, whatever it is, there's a space where their thing will be there when they come back next class, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that also goes for a well-appointed supplies layout. I feel like there's a lot of lacking in being able to keep supplies individually in spaces, and a lot of that is moving around as well. I did the separate spaces for eating, gathering, studying, right? Gym versus, I also looked at it and thought, boy, it'd be great if we had these like indoor-outdoor facilities that were kind of easy to go indoor-outdoor for the kids. And the workspaces I kind of envisioned as, I'm a little weird on this, but very flexible. So let's say we had a section that was, certified nursing program, and right near that we had the culinary. Maybe there's some space in between that are normal classrooms, and if CCN, if the nursing program increases, yeah, you're kind of able to combine some other classrooms, move those classes up, you know what I mean? Spaces that based upon interest and needs in the community and needs in the workforce, we can expand and contract. And then, kind of the silly one, like the mobile one. And then, of course, I thought the silly one, the mobile one, and then I heard on NPR this morning that Econ has a mobile manufacturing lab. So maybe I wasn't so crazy. I also thought that it was important to have relaxation and spaces for relaxation and collaboration with the staff that was separate from the students.
Sorry, spaces for staff collaboration?
Yes.
And relaxation.
And relaxation, I mean, you need a break. Anybody who has any kids knows you need a break. And again, the properly sized spaces, mobile facilities, and the mobile facilities could potentially service more than one school. The well-equipped labs with the career path spaces, I did that. Some flexible collaboration areas for the teachers and students, as well as just the teachers amongst themselves, and some good space for one-on-one, and certainly space for specials not to have to share. I thought that was really important that as a system, we keep those separate. And number one, all spaces are safe physically and virtually. That was my pie in the sky.
I think I may have missed one, but.
Did the mobile lab get in there?
For specials,
Mr. Hold this, you can take this one and hold it up.
so dedicated spaces for specials where they're not sharing spaces, that's why I've been missed.
Oh, sorry. That's not here at all.
Well, it's up top, that's up top,
Oh, yeah.
dedicated space for each program.
With each
Okay.
teacher with on-prep space, right?
Okay, yep.
And all facilities are safe.
Another reason next to you.
Great. Thank you. Do you want to go to Sue or?
Sure, I'll go. Let's see, my pie in the sky was state-of-the-art facilities that are fully climate controlled and green buildings. I also felt that we need to look at right-sizing our campuses and our schools for our school community, so similar to what Lauren had said, to assure that the well-being of our young people is paramount, and that they have access to that relationship building with staff.
The beginning of that was
Right-sized,
buildings.
right-sized school communities, that put first the well-being of our young people, allowing for the relationship building and collaboration with their adults, the adults in the building and their peers.
Relationship, collaboration.
With adults, the students and adults, right?
Yep. And that we have educational spaces that allow access to 21st century programming that excites and challenges kids.
What was the last part of that sentence? For adults and kids.
Excites and
That
challenges.
excite, what did I say?
It's not boring.
That excite and challenges kids.
Okay,
I think that's it.
thank you.
Many of mine overlap with what's already been said, so I won't repeat those. I would like the ability to keep more students in the district from a special education perspective and have spaces that fit the needs of those students.
In the building,
In the buildings,
not just in the district, but in the buildings themselves.
in the buildings, in the district, not have to send as many children outside the district for whether public or private services, and what we can reliably service within the district. Coherence across the districts, which it falls under equitable distribution of facilities, but it shouldn't make sense that necessarily that law has a pool, but foreign doesn't have a pool. Certain things like that. It does, but it doesn't. That's pie in the sky there. Continue to have excellent athletic facilities, because I find it's an important part of children, the students in middle school and high school. Which also goes with updated bathrooms and locker facilities at the schools.
Bathrooms and what else?
Locker facilities.
Lockers, and lockers.
And then this fits with Sue's in terms of the climate control, but also green buildings of much more naturally sourced products, and using light and building structure to help climate control and things like that.
So this was 2 here. Thank you.
Do you want me to say other things that were on my list as well?
Sure.
But definitely on dedicated each space, and you don't have to recopy that. Dedicated, that's on the first page. Dedicated space for each program with their own spaces. And then separate space for eating, gathering, and students.
Studying is what it says here. Great. Thank you. Christina?
So this was, I really had to take off the limitations, and I know that was a direct rule, is don't be restrained by limitations at this point, because, the only thing that came to me was walls are walls, desks are desks, chairs are chairs, and we have great environments and cultures, and a teacher and the administration, and that's what makes a school, right? So assuming that, obviously will continue, then what do I want the physical structure to be like? Because I know that what makes a school great is the environment and the culture, and we've got that. We've got great teachers and administrators.
That's what we
So,
felt. too.
Yeah, when you were mentioning that, I'm like, I know you had a good experience when you went to those schools. I'm sure you did. Breaking that down, ideal facilities would include a balance of meeting the needs of our student learners in order to prepare them for career opportunities and work they will be doing in environments that are conducive to being eager to learn. And then the needs of our educators, that they have the space, the equipment, the tools, and the resources to provide an exceptional learning environment for our students, which I think ties in with Ms. Mahler's mentioning,
The spaces.
Spaces and resources, and oh, and Petrosky as well. So needs of the student learners, needs of our educators. My third one, which I did break down and I took off, which Mr. Smith alluded to, is I always go back to the taxpayer, make sure it's fair, but we have to take off limitations, I get it. But knowing that we have a duty to be sure that everything is efficient and everything is, so I took that off. But nonetheless, they will be funding all this, so we want to be conscious.
So efficient?
Efficient, yes. And I don't know, what are some other good words to make it simple? We're responsible, we're, knowing that this is coming from, public funds.
We're good stewards.
Good stewards, excellent.
I had that too.
Oh, you did?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
But we had to take up their limitation right now, right?
Activate and seek efficiency. You
Yes.
mentioned the same thing
And pie in the
before. We have to do
sky,
that.
we've got $1 trillion to spend, so, okay. An environment that is overall comfortable to all, where there's no crowding nor emptiness. So, right sizing, again, to echo. I also see environments that allow for collaborative talking, where discussions can be casual, open-minded thinking can be encouraged, such as open spaces. And what I conjured up was the office spaces of, the last 10 years at the Googles and the Amazons and the, the Zendens and the, but to bring in the fun piece of that, do those really work, I guess is the question, or are they truly, what are the studies saying about those types of environments, or are they just allowing workers to just slack off? Right, so are there studies out there that show that that's successful and you get more out of your employees by doing that? So if you can create that environment in the high school environment, knowing that open collaboration and working together and having it so laid back that you feel maybe inhibitions or new ideas or creative thinking happens, then I'm all for that, kind of environment and having those open spaces and those areas. But nonetheless, I also do, for the students that do need the extra, maybe, and I know they have this in some of the middle schools, I'm thinking of East Shore specifically, where they do have those rooms where they can go, I think they call it the Zen Den, where you can kind of go and, decompress and kind of just, relax, and calming spaces. I do think those are important as well. And then environments that are safe and comfortable, and could be considered a second home during the day.
Thank you. Last but not least?
So
And not necessarily last, because we'll continue.
that's fine. So I echo a lot of things. Those things that are important to me, on the first page there, something new for every school, I think is big. That whatever plan we come up with, that it's inclusive, that equitable distribution of facilities, at each level, I think is key. We want to make sure, and that's been said in different ways, whether it has to do with pools or sports, but the idea that all of our elementary, all of our middle, all of our high schools, students are going to have access to the same thing. What you were talking about, Ms. Petrowski, about that idea for places where shared spaces where they can work collaboratively, right? Also the flexible spaces in the classrooms. I think that's really key. One, and I'm speaking totally anecdotal here, but I teach college and I teach freshmen and sophomores primarily, and it is just astonishing to me how many students come in, not from Milford, but just from Milford, but from all over the place. And that idea of working in a team and being able to do it successfully is so foreign. And being able to take ownership, here's a job that you need to accomplish, now do it. And they're like, well, who's gonna give me directions? Well, figure it out, right? This is not rocket science. You need to break up into 4 different groups, right? And they sit there and they stare like, how do we do that? So I think that idea of, being in a place that both encourages individuality and critical thinking is key, but also that promotes mentorship within the peer groups and teamwork is very important too. But I don't know, like my list is all over the place, everything from more natural light, to AC in every schools, to, having spaces for permanent artifacts that aren't just related to sports, where, kids can see the possibilities of what they might be able to achieve. But I don't know, like when you look at least to me, when I look at our vision, our goals, one thing that I don't see that I feel really reflects kind of the direction we're going into is something that really defines like what is the role of our school. And I know the roles of our schools have changed. Now we're doing everything, we're not just teaching our kids anymore. We're making sure that they have the food they need to be able to concentrate on their school day, right? We're making sure that we have access to services for their families so 6-year-olds aren't worrying about getting evicted from their house, right? So to me, a very important part of this is like to ask the question and to come up with an answer that maybe even is incorporated into our vision and mission is, that idea of what kind of a place do we want our schools to be, right? And you know what, maybe we're growing gardens and we have a food pantry in each one. I don't know, but our schools are doing much more and need to do much more to serve the whole student rather than just provide the best academics. And I think we have to have a clear idea of what we want that sense of place to be. What do we want to accomplish within each of these buildings? Yes, it's great programming, yes, it's to teach them how to be, good teammates, et cetera, but, there are other things that we need to provide too.
It's reminding me, there's a whole organization in DC that's around schools as center of community to make sure the wraparound services are there for kids, and they're kind of designed to do that.
And some of our schools have some, and some of our schools don't.
Yeah, as our families have needed it more and more across the country.
Yeah.
Okay. I missed something here, natural light, and you said something.
Oh, who
Air
knows?
conditioning.
Oh, air conditioning, that there'd be a permanent place for like artifacts other than have to do with sports. You could walk down the hallway and see, I don't know, whether it's a piece of art or a robot someone designed. I'm all for sports, but, not every kid is inspired by a trophy. And you don't know what that trophy is till you walk up and look at it, so.
Right. Do you have questions for them?
I don't have questions. I think they have some great concepts here. It sounds like, almost standards of how do we judge where we are in 3 years. Look at the list.
So then, anybody want to add anything else
Just real quick, one of the things that hearing all these awesome ideas, like, percolated another one. Especially to Ms. White's point about kind of the system design, right? When a lot of the facilities were built, it was in that post-World War II, creating people to build factories and widgets.
Right.
And so as we're looking to try and future-proof it, and certainly like, it was less than 24 months ago that ChatGPT came on scene, and certainly we can't know what's gonna happen, but I think even looking maybe a month ago, when we got that first report of the facility study, there was a delta between even that aspirational goal of Pumpkin Delight and the renovation we just did. So as we think about stuff, I'd love to layer in some future-proofing in whatever way we can do that, so that whenever we finish whatever we do, it isn't immediately like, oh, we should have done X, Y, Z. So.
The flexibility somehow that's needed to change, because it's going to be different. Whatever it's like, it's going to be different.
I have one other one that I thought of in listening to this when we were talking about open spaces for collaboration. It's similar to that, and I'm going a little more pie in the sky than I was doing before, so thank you for all the permissions to do that, everybody else. Spaces within, this is more, I think, of a middle and high school thing, where there is an open space, where there's a space where you can walk out of your classroom and feel like you can breathe inside your school, because it is open. It's not just a space for collaboration together, but it's actually an open, not outdoors necessarily, that's not the point, but something that is a large gathering area, just where somewhere where you can breathe inside a building.
It's like
and
a commons.
feel like I was gonna say, I grew up around a lot of schools that were built this way too, and there was always a commons, there was always a central location. So something, maintaining that or creating that.
And that's similar to what you mentioned before about the corporations, whether it's Google, Apple, or whatever.
Yeah. Works a lot of his open concept office, we can talk offline.
Okay.
Got a lot of thoughts.
Works, doesn't work.
Yeah, right. I mean, in terms of Google Time, you know that, I'm not familiar with the results on the flexibility in some of the other, but I do know in terms of Google Time that like 80% of the products that they developed came out of that time. The 20% of time that was devoted to that flexible collaboration. So it was enormously important. So these are, so how would you answer? Did you want to, go ahead, Jack.
No, I just wonder how we're going to do the dots. the
Yeah, no,
colors.
I know. So what we're going to have you do is first of all, see whether there are things that you would combine, and then have you talk about what your priorities are in what's up here.
Or if there's anyone that you really hate,
You have
you just
stickers.
say,
You
get
have
that one
stickers.
out of there.
So what else? Is there anything missing here that you want to make sure gets included?
Tracy, did you stop early because you were on
No.
first, you got through it?
I just left out detail on the new, but that's fine, because
On-
that's open
Yeah.
on what the new is, but that's
Oh, something,
new, that can be new anything, so it's dependent on the school.
right.
Yeah,
I hope
it could
that's
be-
captured. Is that not captured?
No, that's
there?
fine,
Okay.
because that's me what I didn't
Yeah.
say. That's what I didn't say.
Right. Thank you.
Can I just ask one question? Can you just refresh my memory? And so you're gonna take this information and develop a mission statement for us, a plan on how to move forward?
I would just say it's more your sense of what would be ideal for the Milford schools in terms of your facility plan.
And then the 28th, maybe we'll get at the realities
Yeah.
instead of
But-
pie in the
but this
sky.
is what
Let's
you-
get the
yeah.
pushback.
And we'll get into greater detail about what that looks like. Jack used to use a phrase all the time, and was it Churchill who said
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Churchill said we shape our buildings, and from that point on, our buildings shape us. And when with kids, it can't be truer.
And-
That's just a point. Mike raised the point about the factories.
Yeah, I was just
All I
gonna
could think about, I think a movie was the paradigm shift years and years and years ago. But they
Before
showed-
any of them were born.
Yeah, probably. But they showed pictures of a factory in the 20s and 30s with, piecework, with mostly women lined up next to each other. And then they went to what schools looked like, and they modeled those old schools right after that. Now you're describing what businesses are like. And at least we better say, wait a minute, the schools better not model after the 20s and 30s, it better model after the 30s and 40s.
And you were with the buildings that were created in the 50s to 70s, right? And you've been working really hard to make them flexible enough to do some of these things. But if this becomes your guiding light, instead of being limited by what is in terms of your facilities, so we can work from there. Yeah.
Can I just add one other thing here?
Yes.
I think part of, I obviously wrote way too much.
No, you don't.
But on the well-equipped lab kind of a thing, hands-on learning being part of the focus, because I think we've come to the conclusion as a group that a lot of that hands-on learning is what everybody remembers, right?
Yeah.
Whatever
Yes.
subject
Learn by
it is.
doing.
That's
Yeah.
right. So that the spaces that we are building and envisioning support hands-on learning.
With a realistic amount of digitalization.
Yes.
Can't
I'm
take that
sorry, I
out.
didn't hear
No,
that.
I mean.
You can't take out digital. It has to be a part of everything.
Yes.
Going forward,
No.
for sure, but yeah.
But it just, for me, that was something that kind of stuck, that I didn't actually say those words.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to be there.
And we didn't really capture AI, and I don't really know, I think it's the flexibility that you want.
Flexibility, yes.
Part of the sort of adaptability and flexibility of the structures.
Hands-on learning could be on a computer, digital, right?
Well, I
It's not,
think the point is that we don't have teachers so much standing at the front of the classroom anymore,
Right.
lecturing. It's collaborative, hands-on work, so.
Right, and I would say flexibility of facilities and also the staff, right? Because some people might get that hands-on learning from learning Python programming and doing that in a collaborative group, and some people might get it from auto shop and doing their hands-on that way.
exactly.
So, yeah.
It all comes back to the facilities need to support the programming that
Yes.
we agree is important. So having a building that is nimble.
Yeah.
We want the Jetsons building.
That's a good way to put it.
Reprogrammable constantly.
Megan, I saw your
Yes.
Well, I think
hand.
that's a good word, nimble.
I was gonna add,
Nimble is a very good word. I like it.
we should have the infrastructure in place in terms of this flexibility, in terms of facilities, whether it's internet being hardwired, whatever. That's such a deep part of all of our infrastructure of how we communicate, our security features, all of those aspects. So having the technology in place at a infrastructure level is important.
Bless you.
Also, I think it's important that we have a building for our alternative high school students that reflects the capabilities of those students and also gives them opportunities that are programmatic to reflect the opportunities that are at the other high schools, which is the academy.
Right. Or that they somehow get those experiences, and does
Right.
that need to be in that, well, that's a, okay,
That's a
great.
program decision, not from me, that whole. And then lastly, I think we've touched on this concept within various points, but I think it's important that our schools are embedded in our communities right now, and very neighborhood schools, and I think regardless of what decision we make in the future, we still need to maintain that community aspect.
What else? Anything else?
So I'm not sure that this is infrastructure or school-wise, but an increased integration with the community and local businesses. And I don't know how that fits here, or if it's not the answer to like question.
Flexible spaces to contain new programming.
Right, there you go.
That involves the community.
That involves the community.
Flexible
So
spaces.
spaces to contain programming, the adequate programming.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a good way to say it.
Got it.
It's on the first page.
So
Is
for
that, we already have
facilities.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
so
think
it's
we
there
already
already.
have it.
It's on the
there.
first page.
It's nimble, flexible facilities, it's for students, staff, and community.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going with it. Thank
For
you.
programs, for future, for staff, for students, for, yeah,
Mhm.
just the concept.
I think the kids' worlds have gotten bigger. You used to have your desk screwed to the floor. And now it's class to class, unless you're in middle school, and then maybe it'd be outside, and high school is that much bigger, even they're going out for internships. What does that shape the school? It's different.
Well, I mean, now that you have the capacity to have classes with kids in France and kids in, other communities around the world, right?
And it wasn't a good case, but we learned something from COVID. We learned that homeschooling didn't work to a large extent. It does work to a certain
In some
extent.
ways, yeah.
In some ways.
All right, so, I'm trying to think of whether you think well, look at these and see if you see real redundancies of themes, because you're going to be very frustrated with how few green lights I give you on these. Are there concepts that you want to combine here? We could even maybe try to pull out of these some themes. Why don't we do that? Just take a minute to look these over, pull out some themes, and then you can let me know what's most important. Okay, do you want to take a minute and get up and look at them up close, or you want to stay where you are?
Your chair screwed to the floor?
I know my answers.
You know your answers, yeah. Okay. All right, you do have some big themes. Let's see.
I think that there's several things that lead to flexible, collaborative space for students, staff, community.
Those are different, I think. Collaborative spaces, I think we talked about a lot, wanting people to be able to collaborate together, teachers, students, and then all together. And then we talked about flexible spaces, physically nimble infrastructure that can be adapted to new programming over time. So collaboration and flexible spaces, I think are different. But they both jumped out a
So
lot.
collaboration and, that's both in terms of staff and students, right?
Yeah.
I cannot remember.
So we just say collaboration writ large?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there other themes that you see in what you generated? Sort of embedded in the community, is that a theme? We have it, what do we want to be able to accomplish? I'm thinking of the community school kind of model.
So the community, being embedded in the community is in support of the students and teachers, not just from a, what am I going to learn, but how am I going to be supported to learn that?
There were multiple themes that all came and touched on the word community in different ways.
I think so, yeah.
So just community kind of captures them all. Bringing in the community, being a part of the community, embracing the full community and the families as the role of the schools, all of that was in there.
And I think under that too, the community thread is the not having disparities depending on where you live in town between the facilities.
Yeah.
I think there's a theme of green / efficient / adaptable / suitable for growth. Green, efficient, adaptable, suitable for growth.
Accommodating programming was another one too. Spaces that allow the programming opportunities.
So is that under flexible spaces?
No, flexible spaces to me is spaces that are capable of changing over time.
Okay.
Like you said, if we need to expand, now there's more students, we need a bigger CNA class, then we can do that.
Okay.
Physically moving things as opposed to spaces that adequately accommodate our programming. So you don't have the
Okay.
teacher walking down the hall with all the Spanish stuff on a cart.
Yep.
Or art supplies tucked under their arms.
And what about something along the lines of like, designed to, like, I don't wanna say just like wraparound services, but designed to hit like all aspects of student needs. Like, to me, it's more than the community, right? It's best serving the students, best promoting success.
The whole person of the
So,
student,
Yeah,
not
all
just-
supports.
it's like all supports, yeah. Or it's best serving,
Best
you
serve the
know,
students' needs.
students' needs, I mean, with the goal of success, right? So what do they need to be successful? And so how can we?
Sometimes
how can
it's
we
to
make
learn
su-
more math, sometimes it's to have
Yeah,
breakfast, not worrying about their house and having breakfast.
yeah, exactly.
Does that best serving student success? Is
For
that
right
does-
now, it's good.
Okay.
And then on that bullet, just looking at that, one of the things we talked about was buildings and campuses are appropriate for the student population for programs. So I think making sure there's not, both the facilities, but also the size of, especially on the lower end, the more neighborhood elementary school, that it's not really tiny on one side and huge on another side.
Right sizings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Where would you put that, Mike?
I think maybe like
In the
equity of facilities and community, like community of school population, like catchment area, or I'm not sure how you'd say that, right?
Yeah,
But it all kind of, they dance together in that way.
Appropriate sizing?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that little piece just popped out from community, but for good reason.
Yeah.
And would technology fall into infrastructure? Or would that be its own bullet point, right? Because we want our schools to be as high
Well,
tech.
state of the art.
Right,
State
the
of the
flexible
art.
spaces, I think, could also be the,
It's like
you know,
what
the air
Megan said.
conditioning, the sunlight,
But it's
the,
also what Megan said too, the buildings need to be able to support technology as it changes and grows. We don't wanna have to like run extension cords through the wall every time there's a new type of something or other.
So suitable for growth on that line doesn't necessarily just mean physical, it means academic or programming or growth
Yeah.
in many ways.
Technology,
Growth,
yeah.
yeah, technological. So growth has many definitions
I think
on
that little piece of that line right there goes with the flexible spaces at the top.
Mm-hmm, it ties in.
Yeah.
So this part,
suitable for growth, yeah.
I like that.
I think the whole thing, that whole line goes up there,
Yeah.
right? The green efficient.
Flexible.
I would almost say green and efficient are separate, but I'm no
I'm
longer.
thinking that too.
Lovely.
Well, I like the adaptable and the flexible spaces.
Yeah.
Is there enough in there about
Makes sense for me.
evolving technologies?
Is that what you were going for?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. I think that's the one we just checked. Yeah, with the nimble and
Because that's
adaptable.
probably the most
Yeah,
rapid
so maybe
change.
those
Yeah,
two.
yeah.
Exactly. Spaces that can accommodate that change.
okay, so we move those up, is that all right?
I think under green and efficient, you could add, you know, natural light.
Yeah.
Natural light, natural, what were some of the
I
other?
think you can also air
Climate
conditioning.
Air
control.
conditioning,
Climate control.
yeah, climate control,
Good ventilation.
air quality.
Comfort.
Yeah.
Comfort, yeah.
Not too much, though.
Huh?
Have you got your themes here then? Are they, you think they're pretty much all captured here? Say more about future proofing.
Well,
You think it's built into the flexibility and adaptability, or?
I think just as we're crafting this, we need to be cognizant of, we can't know what we need in 24 months. So building in some of that buffer, let alone a decade, right? Whereas I'm new here, I don't know what was considered before, but that's one of the things that I certainly want to make sure we really think through.
Does it make sense
I think we should
for you?
elaborate on the, oh, I'm sorry.
I think it is part of flexible and adaptable.
Elaborate on the, like 21st century programming space, probably under, not really flexible, but just in general.
Right. Like, and that's one of the things I was just thinking, right? Like, these schools were built with the idea of a science lab was focused on like Bunsen burners, and now one of the things we want to make sure our kids have the facility to do is have an engineering lab where you can make and break stuff and tinker and do those kind of things. And so those, understanding the realities of what it was when the facilities were built, what it is now, and then trying to extrapolate what it could be in the next decade or so.
Well, I think one of the conversations we had when Slam was here was the discussion about how much space utilization we have in each school, and we've done a very good job, the administration, of utilizing the space effectively, so we don't have a lot of dead space or any of these and finding things. But to Mike's point, we didn't anticipate 2 years ago that there was going to be a population boom on one side of town, which changed where the preschool classes are. So I think that ultimately, to Mike's point, is we have to have a space, because what we learned was that kids aren't sitting in a classroom anymore. The ideal size is much smaller than it was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And the kids aren't glued to their desks and stuck in that spot anymore. So you have to make space for all of these discussion points that we've discussed in terms of future proofing of, can kids leave their art projects? Can they put their coats somewhere? Can they do all of these, that? So
I think one of the things we talked about was the normal spec, correct me if I'm wrong, the normal space for a classroom is larger
right,
now than it was.
Significantly larger than it was previously.
50 years ago, because kids are expected to move. Even though you probably have fewer kids in the classroom, you don't have 30 kids in class anymore, but they're expected to get up and move around and walk around. They need that. Just, that's the way the instruction happens now.
I'm trying to think of, I mean, there were so few classes where kids were actually sitting at desks when we were.
Some teachers made it clear that the kids are bigger too.
Yeah.
And bigger than they were 10 years
Oh,
ago.
interesting.
So I think, it's important to recognize that the space needs have changed over the years as well. So I don't know where that would come in there.
But I think it goes into flexible spaces,
flexible.
because
Yeah.
to Luna's point about flexible movement of rooms and things like that, that we might be able to have a English class in a smaller classroom, but we can't necessarily have a language arts class taught, or a world language class taught in that. So we just don't know if that exists or what it's going to be in the future.
Okay. We don't know what the classes are going to be in the future, right?
Right.
Is there going to be a prompting class, an AI prompting class next year?
My hesitation is, I don't want us to go down the path of, as lovely as to have a planetarium, I don't think we need a planetarium.
But if you get one, you need 2 or 3 of them.
Right. We have one.
We have one.
And so that was a pie in the sky idea in there, so it was a great, and we've spent
We
time
have
and
one
we
too.
have invested in it, but it's not necessarily, maybe it's not the most productive, useful use of our.
Flexible space.
Yes, it's not a flexible space.
Megan and then Mike. I'm sorry, did you want to respond to that, Tom?
Just building on it, but yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, go ahead. If you're building on that,
Yeah, and I think one of the things, like, to Megan's point about figuring all that stuff out, and I know I'm jumping questions, but I just want to throw it in this discussion, is like, I'm a big fan of not recreating the wheel. So part of what I'm really excited to see, and hopefully we can talk about it, is what other districts who've built new schools recently, and figure out what parts of their model might work in our community.
So some field trips.
Or just, yeah.
Virtual field trips.
Virtual field trips, yeah. Yes.
before we jump to that, I think it's very important as we're talking through this to make a key distinction, and it's not quite on your list. And so if your list becomes very important on that piece of paper later, I think it's important to make a little distinction between flexible and adaptable. Adaptable is where we're capturing our future proof. It's where we're capturing our new technology. It's where we're changing with what comes next. And we're building something in a way that allows us to do that. And flexible.
So we have that there, kind of, right?
Yeah, we
Underneath
have it. It's just a second. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's flexible, adaptable collaboration. The adaptable is different. Flexible is we can change it when we need to year by year, and adaptable is we don't have to build an entirely new school because there's a new technology application that's taking over our lives.
You have been exercising a lot of adaptability for the last 70 years or so, 75 years.
Imagine though, if you build a new building in 2030, 70 years, we've got a plan for the 22nd century instead of the 21st century. It's like, we're talking future here.
Can I add something else on this? I don't know if it's space or community, or a combination of both, that we are focused, obviously, as the Board of Ed, on the educational piece, but there is a community piece too, right? So our community uses our gyms on non-school hours. Our community might use some of the auditoriums to do, I don't know, meetings or shows or something. And I think part of our direction here should be to include what our community needs as well. If we're looking pie in the sky and we're looking at the best space for the facilities, it should also include community needs.
Athletic facilities for sure.
Hmm?
Athletic facilities for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's also so much programmatically there that the senior citizens can contribute to kids and kids to senior citizens.
Absolutely.
You know, I think community's a two-way street.
So I think rather than give you dots, I think you've kind of come together around some themes here.
Yeah, you
And-
really disappointed us. Let's two together.
But we may take these other sheets and just fit in concepts as we are reviewing this, if that works for you. And then at another time, we can talk about the implications of this for kind of broad brush, what's the board thinking in terms of your facilities needs given all of this? Okay? That work for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we need to have time to let people get at the pushbacks too, so that, I mean, we're not buying
We'll
this
talk
guy.
about that next
You know,
time.
we know that we need to take the ideals and the dreams and then apply reality. We just want to separate it.
It might also be that something strikes you in the shower or at some point, your creative moments between now and the next time we meet, and that you want to make sure it gets included here, and we can be flexible and adaptable and make sure that that happens as well. Okay, so let's move on then to the second. We were talking about, well, we gave you information, and I think it's actually going to be more appropriate for our next conversation about your actual facilities. Did you have any questions about the pieces of research that talked, do I have it up there? The typical school sizes and reasonable school lifespan. Any surprises there? Was it interesting information for you?
It's heavy stuff compared to Fort Milford.
It is heavy, considering the age of your schools.
You know, you have a real problem. Your schools are maintained so beautifully. They look great. How do you decide, well, let's replace it? Or, you know, even 14 buildings, we'll talk about all that. The age, 70 years, we'll talk all about that.
I wasn't sure if you could just really quickly summarize it for anyone in the audience who hasn't had.
Thank you. Yes, that was.
Reviewed it or is watching at home, maybe?
Definitely. Thank you, Mike. I actually thought about doing that. So it's ideal elementary sizes. The enrollment range in the state of Connecticut is between 300 and 600 students. Class sizes around 18 to 22 students. And these factors are affected by urban versus suburban, specialized programming, facilities, and resources. In the middle school, the range is 500 to 900 students, which is considerably larger than yours now. Grade levels are typically 6 to 8, same as yours. Preferred class size is 20 to 25 students at that level. And then team-based approaches, and I know that you've needed to adapt given your enrollments, the team structure, and so on.
Dr. Broderick?
Yeah.
Just for the viewing audience at home, those documents are on our long-range facilities plan website right now, so they can
Thank you.
access it from home right now.
That's great, thank you, Dr. Kataya. So let's see. It goes into the advantages of that kind of enrollment for academic programs when you have 500 to 900. And then high school is 800 to 1,600 students. You're getting up toward that, but you're not quite there in your enrollment in the two schools. And then it goes into class size, course offerings, et cetera. Is this sufficient
that's
for you?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. And then in terms of
the other one. Average school life expectancy. Yeah, typically in Connecticut, the average life expectancy of the school is 40 to 60 years, varying depending on how well maintained and what kinds of renovations have occurred, changing educational needs, et cetera. And then it gives some considerations like building materials and initial construction, the kinds of maintenance that's happened, and clearly you've had a lot of maintenance and additions and that kind of thing on your schools. State and local funding, and then replacement of the building. And the other factor is what happens if you have a big state investment in your facilities and then they don't serve for the life expectancy of that change, and then you end up having to pay the state back. So just some other things to consider. So, the next thing was any other information that you think you need in order to move forward with this work effectively, that the board would need to consider?
You know, we'll be looking at surveys, we'll be looking at interviews, we'll be looking at focus groups.
We'll be talking about who you want to.
In terms of information, I know we had already sent along to administration some questions that I had that had come in from board members. And I think on the, there's an FAQ on the website as well with the start of some information. And I know, for instance, exactly what is the rule about reimbursing the state on, that's, I think, an important question because we put a lot of money into our schools. So what exactly is the rule about reimbursing the state if we were to close the school and had to return state funding?
So the reimbursement obligation, should you close a facility before you've lived the lifespan promised, essentially?
And I think much of it's about a specific thing. You put a roof on the building, which costs a lot of money. You don't get rid of the building in a year or two, or you owe the state back the money for the roof. I think it's that type of consideration.
It is, correct, but and it's over a certain length of time, so.
And it's prorated, I think, too.
Right, so exactly what, because we have some buildings that we put a lot of money into, so.
Absolutely.
And that analysis should be done, so we know building by building.
Great.
And then I know there were some questions about, I think at some point we're gonna have to talk about high school. What are we gonna do about high school, 1 or 2? So there were some questions about, realistically, how much square footage would be needed for one high school? Is there property in the city that could accommodate one high school? What would the cost estimate be? I think the current reimbursement rates are on the website already.
Oh, they are, okay.
Yeah,
I got the square footage, the property needed, and what was the?
the cost estimate to build a new.
To serve all students.
In the same space, if we were to build any new elementary schools, where would those be located, square footage and cost estimate to fit within the range of, that was the 300 to 600 students?
I think one question that I would like to hear from the community is what do they believe is the right size of our high school, middle school, and elementary school, given the, that'd be a survey question, given the, so we can talk about that in a minute.
Yes, so hold your.
And then on that thought, whether or not, do we have elementary schools now that have enough land to build a new school on the same property? Like they did at Platt, they built the school, the new school on a different piece of the property, and then they tore down the old school.
We got information about square footage of the schools, but that gets at that question, what's the actual property square footage that goes with each?
That's in
The land size that goes with each?
Yeah, but we don't know
The
where
acreage. The
but
acreage.
it's not just acreage, it's where the school, the existing school sits on the property, and whether there's a chunk of the property that could be used for a new building,
And
while
is it
the
a
old
swamp?
building is still.
Still there?
Still there.
And not a swamp.
And that's why-
Yeah, right, well, yeah, that's so.
I feel like there's no way we have a space of land that's big enough to build a building and hold a building at the same time,
Well,
right?
there might be.
There might be.
There might be in a couple of places.
So on the question one, I think it would be, if there are other similar sized communities, so around like 50,000, who've recently gone through an exercise like this and looking at what they determined, or if they've built a new school, or any other communities in Connecticut who obviously are dealing with similar constraints about reimbursement rates, how they navigated their way through this process.
And like, in some cases, you might want to look out of state too.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
Sometimes you find other states
yeah.
are,
Yeah.
you know, way out there with technology.
Boston just did some
Would
cool
love that
stuff.
With architecture or what have you.
Yeah,
Boston just did some very cool investment stuff.
yeah.
I would add to that just a little bit, maybe, I don't know if it's a separate question or not, a discretion of the writer. The newest buildings that have been built in Connecticut, et cetera, what do they look like? What's there? What do they have? What's their cool shiny thing? What are they doing to account for the same type of questions that we're accounting for? How did they do that?
I'd kind of like to know if they're happy with what they did, though. Like, they did it, but is it,
Mhm.
does it work for them?
No one's gonna tell you they're not happy.
Well,
Not after
someone
that much
might.
money.
Like, Ms. Preet.
Not after spending $300 million. No.
Like Christy, Ms. Preet just asked, what does the research say about, like, what does the research say in something? Is there some, there is
What
no
does the
place that will
what does
tell
the
us?
reseach say on,
Flexible spaces.
like flexible
And
spaces?
flexible
like-
workspace.
Like Zen type areas,
Yeah.
or,
If you have a ping pong table, are you more productive?
yeah.
Good at
I
summer.
took I don't know, I just have a totally different view of what this question was about. One of the things that I was interested in understanding was if there were any surveys out there as to what the workplace was going to be looking like over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, so that we're sure that what we're building for is going to support our kids getting out of school and being able to get into the workforce effectively. And I don't know if that's programming or infrastructure or a combination.
You started with surveys.
Right, a survey.
So
Are there surveys of what the needs in the workforce are going to be?
yeah,
Like reports.
there are
Right.
studies.
There's studies,
Right,
studies,
what it's
surveys,
gonna
yes.
look like
What,
and-
what is the future going to look like, so
Yeah.
that are we planning, is our planning going to help support those needs?
It's a great question.
But I think it has to do with programming as well, right? It's not just buildings, it's what the programming is gonna be.
Well, we have to remember that it's only been forecasted out for 5 years, but we have had, programming. We are already looking at what kind of programming it is that we want to have in our schools, so that's already been
Yeah.
defined to a point.
To a point, yeah.
And yet, there are workforce development organizations in Washington that are looking at this kind of thing. that,
Right.
Probably.
Where are the deficits, like
These are all questions
teachers,
for
it's hard to get
AI.
teachers.
It's an interesting place to start and then confirm or change. Megan?
I would like to know, this is pretty, do we have lead pipes and things in our buildings? And what are the other exposures in terms of, I know we have some tiles with asbestos, and what are the remediation that would be necessary within the schools in that space?
Is that not in the
It is.
Yeah,
report?
that's in the.
I did read certain parts, but that it was this innocuous, there are pipes that are original, which.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you, yeah, okay.
That's one of those questions of like, I don't need to go into the specifics of what that is, but lead pipes were only banned in like the 1980s, so if we have buildings from 1954, what kind of pipes and structures? I know we've probably done a lot of replacement in the process, but what are some of those internal infrastructure aspects? I know I saw certain tiles that would still need to be remediated, which we've done along the way, but does a school like Live Oaks or Cap Bend, which has not had a major renovation, require more environmental remediation in terms of that to bring it to quote-unquote building codes of this?
I think that's all part of the study, though.
Yeah, some of it is in there, but not, like, it's not.
Not that level of detail.
No, like.
But that's a really good point. Like,
Health and environmental what are current health and environmental remediations needed?
Yeah. Part of the reason I ask is because the federal government just literally banned all lead pipes in the next decade. So, and that's specific within schools and other places, and I don't know where we stand within that process, and that can change. It can dramatically change in that period of time of whether or not it needs to be done, but it should be an awareness that we have.
So I'm gonna ask one other thing about this. Like, I did read through the reports and it was a slog.
It's a lot,
It was a lot. I'm a matrix person. So I want to see this school must have, should have, could have totals, right? So to me, that should come into part of our planning is where are we most at risk?
And you didn't see that in the exhibit?
I did, it's there, it's just not.
User-friendly?
Huh?
It's under each school. It's
Right, I just wanted to see the whole, schools down one, I wanted it combined.
Can I saw spreadsheet?
Instead of me creating the spreadsheet myself.
I already started my own spreadsheet. You can make one.
Me
They're
too.
really fun.
I went to go start it and then I said, maybe I'll just ask for this.
Yeah, right.
Let's see if it already exists first.
Well, if one of you has created it, then you can.
Totally on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I literally was like,
Is that
oh,
something administration can do?
It already exists.
It already exists, okay.
there you go.
We just have to ask BV to pull it. They have a database, and we could ask them for that.
All right.
That'd be
That's
great.
to come from them.
So, matrix, what do you want to call it? Matrix of all needs of the. or-
Right, a matrix of all schools and their status, for want of a better word. The status of their needs. Because I was literally going like, this paper, and I just thought, okay, I just need a spot.
Anything else?
I have some thoughts. So when I think about the community, I think about the business community and what they are currently seeing as far as, students coming, even if they employ high school students or, I don't know exactly how, because normally you think they come out of college and you kind of understand what the true needs are. But in my head, I'm also thinking the business community might have some kind of input of the ideal environment for successful employment. Our college student alumni, recent maybe, who've come back and say, I wish Milford Public Schools did X.
So, we're going to get into.
Is that on the third?
another
Okay, got it. I
question,
just
yeah.
wanted to make sure,
And
because I see
both-
questions.
Both of those questions, and we need to be
Gotcha.
moving on to that in
Okay.
a second.
Gotcha.
Anything else? Okay. Should we move on to that? I believe I just kind of, I guess it's the, so let's start with, so I just heard business community, but whom else and how? Well, again, I really see interviews with individuals, with key individuals.
Such as?
Such as your mayor, probably. I mean, sort of people that it would be both educationally and politically astute to meet with.
Finance.
So some can be in groups and some can be individuals. Have you got some thinking? I know you want to hear, I know you really want to hear from the community and the people in the schools.
So staff, Parents.
So you want to start with, let's start with internal, okay?
Right.
Is that internal to the district or internal to the building?
To the district,
Okay.
meaning
Yep.
all. So staff, let's get refined there. Who on the staff?
Teachers, administrators, paras. I mean, I think it should go
Yeah. I
the
think it
full.
should be all of everyone.
I think it should be a full sampling.
Paras, non-certified.
Yes. Special ed.
Also lunch assistants as well as our,
That would be non-certified.
the maintenance staff.
Maintenance, what's the one I was thinking of?
Office.
Nursing, oh, they're probably certified.
Central office.
Staff.
I think we should ask our students as well.
Hmm?
Our students, right? Like,
Yes, but, yeah.
Are they not internal?
No, they
Well,
are.
they are.
Okay.
Internal. Well, we've done that with
Are
students.
families internal?
Families.
So I
I
would
would
say.
say families.
The only other internal one that might be is like the SROs, the police officers that are
Yeah.
in the building.
Great.
Going forward with safety is certainly going to be a real question. How do you do it?
Okay. How about, anybody in particular to interview for this process?
What do you mean?
Versus a survey.
Or versus a focus group?
Oh, I see.
I think it should be a sampling of teachers who have been in the district a while and who are new to the district, so they can kind of compare. Maybe there was something that used to be that was beneficial and is no longer, and vice versa. That's something that's new, that's not used, that could be beneficial.
New and veteran, but also, because I was gonna add the tenure of teaching career to that also, but new to existing in Milford, but existing out of Milford, coming from another district as well, represented.
So teachers who've come from another district?
Yes.
Okay.
As well as teachers who are new and who have been around a while, so both tenure and location.
This might be nuance that we could get through a survey, better than focus groups.
Depends on how you're doing focus groups. Sometimes focus groups tend to just talk to the same people over and over. The interviews just tend to interview the same people over and over, particularly when it comes to families and communities, so.
Well, my recommendation is to spread the word as widely as possible and let anybody who wants to participate. If we can do it via Zoom, we can create new opportunities, or Jack and I could split it into 2 different rooms or something along those lines. So if there are too many people who sign up for it, but I just think that if you want this kind of nuance and you want to be able to sort of segregate their perspectives, it might be easier to get that through a survey. But that's fine, this is helpful too.
I think it's less about segregating the perspectives and more about making sure those voices are represented.
Okay, that's
It sounded
helpful.
like you were trying to make sure you had a representative sample
Yes.
over variables we were aligned on in your focus groups, and I would say that would matter there.
That's great.
Their opinions distinct from each other in the results aren't as important.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. All right, how about external?
Families.
Senior citizens.
He said seniors, do others agree?
Yes.
I kind of like that. I like the idea that, there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of ability to share that makes things, even history, more real, right?
They
I
can
like
shoot
their
it
answers
down.
segregated.
Well, we'll do a separate
So I
focus
think-
group with them probably.
I think added to this, you have to have, obviously, political, you need to have the mayor, you should have the board of aldermen. I mean, these are all people who will have some insights as well.
I think planning and zoning would want a voice as well.
You could say any elected official.
Yeah, elected officials, I suppose, is the better way to say that.
But maybe
Not
it's
appointed officials.
specifically the Board of Aldermen and then other elected officials? Or would you just throw them into the elected official pot?
Elected and appointed. I think
Okay.
is how you could bucket it past.
Okay.
That would be planning and zoning, alderman, and finance.
I think also some community organizations in terms of support, like charities, like the United Way, Boys and Girls Club.
The ones that have a closer tie to the schools.
Yeah, Boys and.
Some of the ones that other people.
YMCA.
Got that on.
So I think you also, to Jack's point, we want to make sure we're grabbing folks that don't have touches to community, to as intimate a relationship with the school, because if you're trying to cultivate a community understanding, so I'd say like the chamber,
Yeah,
and I think
Chamber of
also
Commerce.
even flipping back up to families, I would love to have both the voices of those families that are involved in PTA, as well as voices of families that aren't involved in PTA, right? So you have, making sure you're capturing that entire swath.
Any silo group can shoot down the project, so
Exactly.
be sure you hear from them.
Alumni.
Alumni and alumni families. That's where our strongest opinions are.
Somebody mentioned, you mentioned business, the business community before,
Yes.
and we have the chamber here. Are there
Yeah,
other?
you could put chamber slash business,
Mhm.
that's fine. There's a very good representation of lots of different industries in the chamber.
And maybe beyond that, you could also do like the Kiwanis and the Rotary and a few other, the civic organizations that grab those folks who are.
That would be the community orgs, the
Yeah.
Y,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
Kiwanis, the, yeah.
Yeah.
I do also think it's important to capture people who don't have kids in the school system, who are not seniors, who are not families.
So just community members?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's their taxes too. Our taxes too.
In that vein, I kind of thought with students, have students in or out of the system, newcomers to Milford. Maybe they've come from another district, another city, California, Chicago, Texas, you know, and they could have some input into, you know, they come from a great school system or whatever, they're just newcomers to Milford.
Newcomers with kids or without both?
Both,
How
yeah.
about retired staff?
Retired staff?
Retired staff.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Just retired or just not here anymore?
Well, there are sometimes organizations, and I don't, you might know whether you have them, that get together for lunch every now and then, and somebody has a way to contact them.
Sometimes real estate agents have a real perspective about what their clients say. We don't want this town, we want that town. Just the image of the schools.
That would be chamber business as well.
And oftentimes with retired staff, the existing staff are still in contact with them. So you could kind of advertise it through existing staff, because if they have, you know, longstanding relationships, they know where they are.
Great. Okay. Now, finally, this is pretty good, and if anything else comes to mind, we can make sure we include them as well.
This is the last question.
The last question, right. You want to go ahead?
Oh, it's just asking, what questions should we ask on the survey? And it does indicate survey 1. I think we're probably aiming for an early survey, but then maybe a later one that's much more detailed. The first one might be more open-ended, and the later one might be much more specific.
So this one could share a vision that you articulate, that you know, and ask for perspectives on that. But we want to be able to come next time with a beginning of a survey document. So we're wondering if you have some questions in mind now that you would like to gather through a survey.
Yes.
So would there, I'm going to make the assumption that there would be common questions then? You're thinking on all the surveys, but then some specifically for each group? Right? Because you wouldn't ask realtors the same questions you would ask former staff, would you?
Well, probably not in a focus group, but I think on a survey, you might just capture who is responding and have everybody respond to the same questions.
Students and.
I disagree.
Okay.
I would think that we're asking specific audiences questions based on their perspectives.
So that's the kind of, that's the direction that I went in, like,
Yeah.
you
You
know,
also can't have 50
students and
surveys.
staff should be
Yeah,
asked.
We have to
You can
really
say, if you
narrow
are a
it in
business
and-
owner, answer these questions. If you are not, skip these questions.
And that's what groups are for. You have
That's
a more
what you
dynamic
survey,
conversation
yeah.
in a group than you ever do in a survey. The survey, you want to condense it so it's like 10 to 20 questions so we can extract the useful
Right.
information across all. And you can do the, is this survey going to have crosstabs and all that fun stuff?
Yes.
Awesome. So then you can pick it apart through that stuff.
And the survey maybe starts just as an umbrella with the themes, and then it gets whittled based on various factors.
So you're asking basically in the survey, what are your priorities, person who's answering the survey, for our school system amongst these items?
And how would you state the items?
Like a ranking.
Well, we have our themes, and within our themes, we can list those, rank them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever that is. And, you know, you can always have the other, if somebody wants to add something in.
We know people like an open-ended comment section.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it possible in this first survey to have sort of the broad questions like that, but then to also have subsets of 2 or 3 questions for different groups? Not all the way down to specific, like, are you a realtor? Answer this question. But if you're a business owner,
We
answer
could
these
certainly
questions.
do that.
If you currently have students in Milford or have had, you know, if you're a family who has had students, whatever, that does that. Because some of the ones that I had at this very high level are more high level, but for families, for people with students in school.
Right.
Who have that kind of perspective.
Right. Right, we could do that, maybe on the second round, but
Okay.
Well, I think we need to get some of those answers sooner than later, because for me to move forward with a plan, there's certain things that I, need to know from our community and from our parents. For instance, started to mention this before, I want to know what families, what is their preferred size of our schools. I don't want to start, thinking in terms of, a high school that's 1,500 kids if the majority of families feel they want smaller schools.
And we can present that to them as ranges.
Right, and I think that's important that,
Yeah.
it's worded appropriately so that, given that our current high school enrollment is 1,566, what is your preferred high school size? So you say, 1,500 plus, or, 600 to 800, that kind of thing. And then similarly for middle school and elementary school, based on our current enrollment, middle school, you might have 3 sections, 1,100 plus, 500 to 600, 350 to 500, and the same for elementary. I think that's, that specific information is important for us to have early on.
great.
And
Do you
then-
want to say anything out of the research that,
I think that's
you sort of
important.
preface
Yes.
it with the research data, and then say in Milford
I don't-
today it's this?
I don't know if I would want to see it taint, that's kind of putting an idea in their head, I think.
It is.
But it's
So-
informing them rather
It
than
is.
asking without properly contextualizing it.
Some part of it's educational issues. If the school isn't big enough, parents might love a nice small school, but you can only give 1 foreign language or maybe 2. The choices are
Well, then, that's
increased.
something for us to discern, I think, later on.
Yeah.
Do we, okay, this is what, is it realistic to have schools that only have 250 kids in them? No, it's not, so we might have to make decisions, but at least we know where the community's thinking is. And I think
At
it's
least
important.
directionally.
I think it's important that we have that. I think it's important that we know, for instance, if families prefer to have preschool housed in one central location or dispersed in different areas of the district like we have it now. And then, asking maybe some questions, what's more important to you? And that would go back to what we were talking about a minute ago. Taking the themes and ranking, 21st century programming or state-of-the-art facilities, both are equally important. There might be families that they just want They just want schools that have air conditioning. They don't really care about. So I think those are perspectives that it's important to have.
1, 2, I don't know if there's a way to do this in here, but thinking from the families. These aren't fully thought out, but 2 different ideas to try and capture sentiment on. One is, would you prefer to have a larger size school with more program and curriculum opportunities, or would you prefer to have a smaller school with fewer program and curriculum opportunities, extracurricular opportunities, without even commenting on size? Just from what you're looking at now, in theory, which of these is preferred to you? I mean, we're never gonna be a town that has 7 high schools with 10 kids in each. That's just not a thing. But from a conceptual prioritization perspective, leaving it that open-ended, do you like this or do you like this? Or no opinion, obviously. And then the other is, would you be willing, I don't know how to do this. It's something that you'll help me with this here. I'm stuck on words, which is uncomfortable for me. Would you be willing to send or bus or transport or whatever your student to a different school, not come, regardless of where you are now, agnostic on where you are now, if it meant that they would have increased opportunities, increased program and extracurricular opportunities? Would you be willing to go to attend a different school?
And is that specific to middle and elementary, or it's really anybody?
So it's really anybody.
Are you thinking in terms of?
Would you be able to change from wherever it is you are now to something new?
So
If that
saying this-
something new gave your kid more opportunities?
Saying this without judgment, please, anybody. But, so if we were to consolidate elementary schools, would you be okay with?
Not putting any of that. That's not the point of the question. But it's the idea kind of behind it of how much appetite is there for flexibility if the resulting structure, the resulting facilities plan increased opportunities for our students and it just came in a different shape. Would you be willing to have your students attend school in a different shape if they got more stuff, if they got more opportunities? Thank you. That's what I was narrowing in on.
I hesitate to ask that question without clarifying that the friend group is huge, and we experienced that in 2010.
And if that factors into the answer, so
yeah,
be it.
Right,
Great.
But knowing that, okay, your kids can have this great program and they're gonna have 1 friend versus 5 friends, right? So that, we have to be, I think we
let them factor that in. We don't factor it in.
I think that's going beyond what we need to.
If that makes sense.
right.
That absolutely might make my decision.
Exactly.
That absolutely might make your decision, but I don't think we should assume it factors into everybody's and let it feed in there.
Okay.
If we're just looking at facilities that enable programming, then.
I mean, that is really our charge here, is the facility piece. That's what we
don't
I feel like some of the
mislead
stuff
them.
that we're going off on some tangents that are expanding the scope of what we really should be thinking about.
And the minutia of the question, right?
Yeah.
The only other comment I had about, when we say programming, I think a lot of people don't know what that means.
Yeah.
So you can give examples, because we have programming that exists now, but, programming beyond what we're all maybe thinking, a greenhouse at every school, so plant maybe some ideas so that they're aware, what does programming mean? Maybe a parent or a first, second grader, what do you mean programming, right?
I would also
So-
change my idea if it was, would I go to a school so my kid could have a greenhouse?
Yeah.
So we gotta make sure we're not being too leading.
Yeah.
Yeah, but academic
Well,
and
I think greater
extracurricular.
opportunities encapsulates
Yeah.
it.
Right. Yeah.
Megan and then Mike.
So I think there should be some general questions of what is your appetite for investing in our schools and values of education? We are talking about a long-range plan. None of these decisions are gonna be happening for next year. No school is suddenly going to pop up in there. Like, it takes years to facilitate, to put this plan in place. Like, we have to be planning for the future. And so, is there an appetite for that? And what is the appetite for that? Are people excited about that? Like,
Should we be investing our time and energy into looking at this?
well, I think to some of the people that we're supposed to be surveying, questioning, is people move to Milford because it has a great school system, but that usually leads to other things that come with it. So it's just a small segment of the greater community. So regardless of that people want to be here because of the vibrancy that is associated with the families being here and the opportunities that exist in the future. So understanding that education is vital to the vibrancy of the general community is why I think that what is the appetite and like understanding like, are you willing to, I don't know if it's appropriate to say it, but like to suffer a little, for a little uncomfort for the betterment of the community.
I think at your point, I remember somebody saying years ago, and I haven't forgotten you, Mike, but somebody saying years ago that people didn't mind getting on the school bus as long as they knew that at the end of the school bus was something wonderful.
Yeah.
It's like
And that's-
commuting. I don't mind commuting as long
Right.
as it's not awful at the other end.
Right, right. Mike?
So exactly to what you're just talking about, I think framing a question, kind of zooming way out, right, is Milford's going to have to invest tens of millions of dollars in our facilities over the next decades, because the first one was built in 1950 and the newest one was built in 1973. With that as our reality, is there a preference to just invest to maintain current operations, or should we consider modernizing parts of our district, which may include building a new school or schools?
And I think up top where it says appetite for investing in our school, personally, I think it should be specific school buildings or school facilities.
Yeah, okay, yeah, school buildings makes sense.
Because that is what we're talking about.
It might be a good place too, just to ask the question, you know, in some form, you know, are the schools one of the reasons that you live in Milford, or you're proud to live in Milford? You know, we talk anecdotally about it all the time, but it might be interesting to see.
Scale question 1 to 5, how important are the schools for your decision to live in
Yeah.
Milford?
So can I go back to the appetite for investing in our schools? Because my recollection is that we have to, right? Whether we're maintaining, or we're building new, or we're combining, or whatever we're doing, our current facilities, we know there are specific requirements that are going to have to be done over the next several years to maintain them.
And
I
you know
think
that's,
that's
but I
those two questions
Combined.
I think, was that the intent that they
Yeah,
combined?
well, the idea is like.
The appetite and then what Mike
It is
said.
a fact of buildings and our current infrastructure. There will be need tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to maintain our footprint as is. Is there a strong preference to just do that? Or is there an appetite to expand the opportunities and facilities we have in our community?
And to your point too, we know that, everybody doesn't know that.
Right,
Everybody is not there.
But it's in those surveys and that data that we
Right,
received.
absolutely, but everybody is not yet at the level of awareness of what that is gonna be. Do we invest to maintain, or do we invest the same amount and modernize at the same time? And I think there's a huge amount of community education that has to be a part of this, or we are not going to get anywhere.
So is it something we include in that survey?
I think it's something we include, because to me, it gives us a sense of what our education deficit is going to be for raising awareness around the need for this. If people do not understand, because they have not been steeped in this stuff like we have for as what feels like years, and I swear it's not even been one yet. The buy-in and the level of engagement that is required from the city of Milford, everyone who lives here, not just electeds, not just the board of finance, not just the alderman, not just everybody, it has to be something that everyone is bought into. Everyone has to understand the problem that we have right now with our infrastructure. Or we're not gonna get the buy-in that we need to do any of this, and it's not gonna matter. We're just tilting at windmills for the next however long it takes us to do this.
So Mary, from a survey perspective, is this something that would be normal or recommended to add some educational information into this question or not?
What do you mean by educational information?
In other words, saying, hey, you know, based upon our recent studies, keeping our facilities as is over the next 10 years will cost X. Would you prefer we just maintain that, or do you think that we should take X and be more creative about
well, fit the.
Newer facilities.
Facilities make the, fit the curriculum.
Hmm?
Like, so let me take this.
Okay.
Yeah, you're the
And
survey.
we're going to refine it next meeting.
Work on it.
Okay.
And I would like, Sue, if you would send me the questions that you
Mhm.
enumerated there, because I don't think I captured it all here. And if anybody else has some that you want, just feed them to me soon. And we'll do our best to come up with something reflective of this conversation. But rather, I mean, it's getting late and we are getting into too much of the weeds, I think, around the questions. And we can just come back with a draft and let you see what how it works for you.
So is this just for the survey, this conversation, or are we having a conversation about the interviewing as well?
Yeah, and we should talk about some of these questions for the interviewing, because we'd like to get, well, I guess we really will plan on starting the interviewing and do that mainly in November, I think, November, December. If you are all right with us waiting until then, we can talk about it on the 28th.
Okay. My things were all geared towards the interviewing, not the survey.
Great. We can get them scheduled.
Okay.
And then have the question conversation at the meeting on the 28th. Does that work for you?
Do you want me to send these questions to you? Okay. So I'll send these to Sue to pass on.
Great, terrific. Any other comments before we close for tonight? Again.
I think we touched on this in the survey, and what we do here is that we're not making new facilities because that's the thing to do, is to make new facilities. The goal of what I think a facility study is that our facilities should align with programming and where we're seeing to move to the future. So when we have this broader question of what's the appetite for change, we're not trying to build new buildings because we don't want to invest. We were trying to build new buildings so that we can have buildings that fit to what is best for the community in the long term, whether it's the size of schools. We shouldn't, to kind of have schools that it's the coherence across the district as well. So it's a broader question than just, let's just invest, or let's build new buildings because it's the cool thing to do, or to do whatever it is. I think that's like a fundamental, important educational point that Lauren's been talking about. And I look forward to seeing what your survey questions are.
They're your survey questions that we're going to try to put into your draft.
Can I throw in one more thing to that point? I fell down a rabbit hole earlier today, and I'm about to take y'all with me on the shortened version of that, so you're welcome. I will make this very quick, but to really hit home the point, we keep saying over and over and over that our oldest school was built in 1950. Our newest school was built in 1973. Yes, things were different post-World War II. There wasn't always air conditioning, sure. But there were a lot of things that really capture how much time has actually passed since then. Because you get to a certain point and you're like, okay, yeah, that's now old. Okay, we get it, it's old, sure. In 1950, fun facts, Harry Truman was president. He had just green-lighted the, green-lighted, I don't know, someone correct me. The hydrogen bomb. The comic strip Peanuts, Snoopy, came out for the first time. Silly Putty was brand new. The Korean War had just begun. The Billboard top singles charts were dominated by Bing Crosby and Nat King Cole. For any of you who don't know those names, go look them up, and that's how old the schools are. All 5 of the Best Picture nominees at the Oscars that year, for the very last time, were all black and white films. That's how new and fancy our school buildings are. The schools were entirely being built for the baby boom that came post-World War II. So it was classroom, 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 fast, jam 'em in. And our newest school in 1973 got a whole lot better in the 23 years since then. Richard Nixon was president and Watergate broke that year. So all kinds of super awesome things you learn about in history class were happening when this last school was born. The US just ended its role in Vietnam. George Steinbrenner bought the Yankees. Roe versus Wade was decided. Something that feels like it was so long ago, we're still discussing. Charlotte's Web was released for the first time. The best picture that year was The Godfather. Secretariat won the Triple Crown. Congress mandated special education services for the very first time. So Foreign High School was built the year that the federal government required special education for the very first time. Miller Brewing Company introduced light beer for the first time. So,
This
you
is all
know.
way too recent for me.
Absolutely. I'm not even going to tell y'all who was born and died in each of those years because it's also slightly horrifying. But all of those things are the same age as our schools, our newest.
The other thing to keep in mind is if you were to build a new school every 5 years, it would take you 70 years to replace your schools. If you stay with 14. So, on that note.
We have to do something.
Well, yes, we do.
Ms. Brennan, if I have a moment.
Yes, Dr. Patel.
I think it's really important to underscore what Ms. Mahler and Ms. Doyle are saying, because in my running around in the community, I don't believe parents understand the problem. So I'm a little worried that a survey is going to go out without, and in our field, we can't fix something that we don't understand, right? If we don't know where this child is stuck or doesn't understand a concept, we can't come in and support that child. So I do believe we need a survey and support the board's effort in that, but I'm going to go back and speak with Emily and talk about how do we push out a better understanding of where we are, of the 1950, 1973. The information is available on the website. I don't know that people are reading what we're sending, but I'm worried that you are right in what you stated. People don't understand the problem right now.
I've put a little bit of thought around that and be happy to chat with you offline about how to capture that information cleanly, succinctly, understandably, in a way that makes sense, and distribute it in a way that people actually see and get repeatedly, which is more than just emails. It's also, there are a lot of different things that can be done to get that out.
And something for everybody to think about in the next 2 weeks, maybe that becomes part of our conversation as well.
You got against Bing Crosby.
Hey, all right,
I love me Bing Crosby, don't
Are
get
we
me wrong.
ready for, we have 2 more agenda items. We have a public comment. We had promised that we'd have public comment pertaining to long-range planning on our, on each agenda. So if there's members of the public that would like to speak specifically to the long-range planning, what we talked about tonight, we just ask that you try to keep your comments to 3 minutes and state your name and address for the record. You can use the podium, you can stand where you want.
Great presentation. Sarah Bromley, 27 Milford, 27 Norway Street, right, we're all tired. 2 things I really appreciated, what you all said, your dreams, dreaming big. I was thinking about what you said about sort of like holistic, schools being holistic for kids, and it struck me, hey, West Haven is going to have a community center, Stratford has a community center, Orange has a community center. What sounded like to me that you were suggesting is that our schools have components of a community center with resources and holistic, stuff. So just throwing out the thought that, maybe Milford could have a community center. We have Egan Center, but I don't know that it functions the way that I think you were speaking about. Other thing is, I teach preschool, and I know this past summer, there were a lot of days we could not go outside. We couldn't bring the children outside, it was so hot. I've been doing some reading about how, to sort of climate-proof our schools, and I just wanted to throw out those things that you're probably already reading about, but about intentionally designing for heat resiliency, like cool roofs, increasing tree canopy cover and vegetation, the shading structures outside. There were a lot of times when I was like, boy, as hot as it is now, our preschoolers were really suffering by not being able to go outside and move, and it was really a hard summer. And I don't think it's gonna get any easier. So planning for indoor spaces, and I know that there were summer soccer camps that couldn't be outside. How do you do soccer camp inside? So those were my thoughts, just as I've been listening to what you're thinking about. It's like really exciting, and I hope that the community is all in for like making big investments in this. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to?
My name's Mary Elizabeth Oak, also known as Emmy. I live at 30 Durina Place. I liked a lot of what you had to say and agree with it. I think in the questionnaire, because I know there is a high population of parents who have brought in children with disabilities, that their answers are going to be very, very different to their working learning environments. That needs to be taken into consideration, since that is a part of your population. Another aspect that goes through my mind, which the lady before me said, is the environmental. Needs to really be looked at on many different levels. Besides heat, water, storms, the whole works, because that's going to have an implication on the structure from an engineering point of view. And one other aspect is, besides learning from the public here, is also learning from the rest of the nation, the other states, but also internationally, because working life is not just this country, it's global. And that needs to be put in there somehow to what they're doing elsewhere, good and bad. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to address the board before we move on? Okay, seeing none, we have board comment. Any members of the board like to make any comment? Mr. Smith?
Yeah, first, I have the pleasure of serving as the representative on the ACES board, and they just released their annual report. It's available online. I did have a hard copy, but I forgot it. But the PDF is really cool. It goes into all of the work they're doing and just the real quick highlights, right? So ACES services 80 districts, and 1,300 of the students they service are magnet schools, but then 744 are some students who have severe special needs, like that we've seen in our budget today. And we heard a presentation last week from the principal of those schools and talking about how some students have 2 or 3 staffers with them. The disability is just so intense. So it's really cool knowing that some of our most needy students have that support and availability here. So it's a 29-page annual report, so you can find it on the website if you want to check out some of the cool stuff they're doing. And the other quick one is just want to do a plug for the upcoming Milford Turkey Trot, which is in its 4th year. And those of you who aren't familiar with it, it was started a few years ago by one of the folks, lives off of Gulf Street. He grew up in, I believe it was California, and they had an awesome turkey trot there. So it's let's see what happens in Milford if we start this up. The first year he had 600 runners. Last year they had 1,600 runners and raised over $38,000, which then he gave back to the PTAs and other nonprofits in our community. It's $20 to register as an adult, $10 for a kid, and they have 1, 2, and 3 mile options, and the music starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, obviously Thanksgiving Day. But it's a really cool event, and it's a low price point. It's really awesome seeing so many people from the Milford Public School community and just general the community come out and run a few miles before putting a lot of turkey in their mouths later. So if you're able to, it's really fun. So thank you.
Thank you. I did forget earlier, board members, to ask for liaison reports, so this would be an appropriate time if anybody. Ms. Doyle?
I will say, first, in the same part of liaison report, we had the grand opening ribbon cutting at Pumpkin Delight, so it was nice to see and beautiful to see the renovation and what the possibilities are. Lovely gyms, science rooms, and all of that space, and I do want to thank Ms. Boyden, Mr. Fairmender, and Mr. Fowler, who was on the board previously, who all served on the committee as well, and to go through the planning stages as we start planning for the addition and renovation at Law and Foreign. So we're in that process, and so we will have more updates as we move forward, and look forward to updating you then.
Thank you. Any other board comment? Ms. Zerbe?
I'm always happy to have the students for high school comments, but so thrilled to see Academy here.
Yes.
That was just fun to have them as part of the group. On the liaison front for Milford Education Foundation, last month they wrapped up their Paint the Path pilot program, which they did in collaboration with Milford Arts Council and Boys and Girls Club, where the students were able to make designs for the skateboards, and their designs were displayed at the Firehouse Gallery, and it was a very successful program. I think the students really enjoyed it, and at the program, that was the pilot program, and I believe it's going to continue. So look forward to that. And their Milford Education Foundation's mini grant program is coming up soon, and they're getting all of that ready, so look forward to having that ready for the teachers and students to send in applications.
I went to that art opening for the skateboards, and they were very impressive, and the artists in residence, the adults that work with the kids were very awesome as well. They were there too, so that was nice. Any other board comment? I just want to mention, I think Veterans Day is coming up. I think our next business meeting might fall after Veterans Day, but I will be forwarding you the invitation from the Veterans Day Parade Commission to march in the parade if you're so inclined. And you might have gotten it directly, but I'll forward to you the email as well. And seeing no further board comment, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Ms. Preet. Is there any objection to adjourning at 9:35? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, board members.